Today is June 9th, 2023. Exactly 50 years ago, Secretariat won the Belmont Stakes and etched his name in racing lore. But when it came time for Bloodhorse to name the greatest racehorse of the 20th century, it was a different thoroughbred legend with the nickname of Big Red, Man o' War. There are plenty of horse racing matchups we racing fans have dreamed of, but not many are as hotly debated as Man o' War versus Secretariat, as it was the debate on who was the greatest racehorse of all time. We will never truly know the answer, but for the heck of it, let's have some fun. Come along with me as I try answering for myself who, in my opinion, I think would win between Secretariat and Man o' War. In the Big Red corner, standing 16'2" hands, weighing 1,150 pounds, and with a 72-inch girth, sired by Fair Play out of Mahuba by Roxanne, I present the mostest horse, Man o' War! A horse who we both know so much and so frighteningly little about at the same time. We might know that his favorite food was peeled oranges, and be able to highlight all of his achievements on the racetrack, but we also only have one full replay of a race he ran, and that was his last. From what can be inferred from the charts and the books about Man o' War, he was first and the rest nowhere, leading the majority of his races super quickly and winning by incredible margins despite frequently carrying humongous weights and being eased up very harshly. Despite all of these handicaps, he went on to set 3 track records, 2 American records, and 3 world records, although none of them stand today. But it can be argued that the minimal efforts he displayed in most of his victories, the higher weights he had to carry, the inferior track conditions, and heck, even the heavier horseshoes he had to wear, are all legitimate factors to say that his final times do undersell him when comparing him to a much more modern thoroughbred. And why it is so hard to compare horses from 50 years apart. The records he set were at a variety of distances and broken while he was forced to carry weights as high as 138 pounds. He lost only a single time in 21 starts, never running a genuinely bad race his whole career, which cannot be said for his rival. To give some specific attention to his lone defeat, while sources vary on what happened in the Sanford Stakes, the consensus was he had an awful start, likely due to the novice starting official releasing the barriers only when the inner half of the field was ready, and not the outer half, which included Man o' War. Even with the later traffic troubles, and carrying 15 pounds more than the winner, he only lost by at most half a length, and still broke the stakes record by 2 seconds alongside the winner upset. And I haven't even talked about the races he won, which included the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes, but he did not run in the Kentucky Derby. But if he did, it is with near certainty that he would have won and become the second Triple Crown winner. He also won the Travers Stakes, the Lawrence Realization, and the Jockey Club Gold Cup, all classic races in which he equaled/set stakes, track, and world records, with one exception. And even after all of that, I'm probably still missing something, which I will apologize for in advance. Man o' War's greatest opponents were usually weights, and not the actual horses he had to face. But he still did beat quite a few accomplished horses, easy example being the first Triple Crown winner Sir Barton, his rival Upset, who he defeated in 4 out of 5 matchups, the Kentucky Derby winner Paul Jones while carrying 34 more pounds, and John P. Greer, the only horse that was ever said to seriously challenge Man o' War, particularly in the Dwyer Stakes, when in a match race, Man o' War was for the only time in his career fully asked, and prevailed in record time. But the other 2 times the two faced, Man o' War effortlessly beat him. The biggest thing Man o' War is gonna have to overcome is running against a horse as good as him, a rarity in his career. Overall, Man o' War was as close to perfection as you could ask for 100 years ago, but with how much horse racing has changed in the last century, it makes it slightly difficult to properly scale his greatness. But what we can tell is that he never ran a bad race, and was able to win at any distance and under any weight given to him with whoever dared to challenge him, which, by the end of his career, wasn't that many horses. But now it's time for our next opponent. Also standing in the Big Red corner, standing 16'2" hands, weighing 1,200 pounds, and with a girth of 75 inches, sired by Bold Ruler out of Something Royal by Prince Quillo, I give you the horse that God built, Secretariat. By now, we all know that Secretariat had a huge heart that was twice the size of the average horse, but there is more to Secretariat than just his enlarged organs. The way he ran had one result by the finish line, usually, but how it was executed was polar opposites. He could either go from last to first, whether he did that in the first quarter of a mile or over the course of the whole race was up to him, and of course, he could just go to the lead from the get-go. No matter the outcome, on a good day, he'd win by many lengths and have a record to go along with it. Anyone who's heard the name Secretariat also knows that he is the 9th Triple Crown winner, and holds the speed records in all 3 jewels. Even after 50 years, none of these have officially been broken. His Belmont Stakes in particular still stands as an American record, not just a track record. He also still holds the Belmont track record for a mile and an eighth when he won the Marlboro Cup, and also he obliterated the best turf horses, not just the dirt horses, winning in America and Canada in the Man of War and Canadian Internationals respectively. He is also the only racehorse to officially win Horse of the Year at ages 2 and 3 in America. In contrast to Man of War, Secretariat's greatest opponents were usually the fact that he was handled by human beings, and the clock. He also did defeat significantly better horses than Man of War. Sham is the easiest to point to, as if Secretariat had never existed, he would have won the Kentucky Derby by 8 lengths, and also still would have held the Kentucky Derby speed record for half a century, just like Secretariat. He just had the bad luck of being born in the wrong year. He beat Forgo, who would go on to win Horse of the Year 3 times, a feat only ever bettered by Kelso. His stablemate Riva Ridge won the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont Stakes, and was a record setter himself, setting or equaling 4 track records in 1973. And to this day, he still holds the mile and an eighth track record at Aqueduct, and the American record for a mile and 3/16. He also broke the world record for a mile and an eighth in the Marlboro Cup, but still lost to Secretariat that day. Hall of Famer Cougar II, who became the first foreign-bred racehorse to earn $1 million in America, 3-year-old champion Key to the Mint, who won the title over Riva Ridge in 1972, and Tentam, a triple Grade 1 winner who had the mile and an eighth world record on the grass in 1973, before then losing to Secretariat in the Man of War Stakes. Overall, Secretariat's records have stood the test of time, and are still the gold standard that has yet to be equaled. He set records on both dirt and turf against top-tier racehorses, but Secretariat also lacks the same grit and consistency Man of War possessed, never being asked to carry weight, and for all the amazing races he ran, he still had a few below-average performances, particularly the Whitney and the Woodward Stakes. And now it's time for the post-parade. This race is a simple field of 5, with the toughest rivals of Man of War and Secretariat respectively running in it. Now let's get to it. Number 1, Secretariat. There's not much I haven't said about him. He is the 9th Triple Crown winner, ending the Triple Crown drought which lasted 25 years after citation, and still holds the records in each jewel of the Triple Crown. Number 2, Sham, second to Secretariat in both the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. His heart weighed 18 pounds, above average for a racehorse, but Secretariat's weighed 22 pounds. What a poor guy. Number 3, Man of War, voted the greatest racehorse of the 20th century, even after over 100 years since his last race. People still talk about him. Number 4, Upset, the only horse ever to defeat Man of War. Despite this, in 4 other rematches against Big Red, Upset stood 0 chance. He also finished second in the Kentucky Derby and won the Latonia Derby as a 3-year-old. And finally, number 5, John P. Greer. While most people think of Sir Barton or Upset when it comes to Man of War's greatest adversaries, John P. Greer is described as Man of War's greatest challenge in the Dwyer Stakes. And now, let's do this. And now we're all in line and ready for the start. And we're off and racing! Out to the early lead, we have Secretariat in front by 3 parts of a length. Man of War is second, followed then by Sham on the inside rail, but on the outside here goes John P. Greer, who's going to go up to Man of War's neck in the early going. Sham falls back to 4th, and the trailer's going to be Upset, the only horse to have beaten Man of War so far. But as we round the clubhouse turn, it is Secretariat in front by 3 parts of a length, and he makes sure to extend that lead as Man of War stays in second position, and then it's another 2 lengths back to John P. Greer, Sham, and Upset, but very quickly this is becoming a 2-horse race. Secretariat going to the front. He has never been pressed by a horse as good as Man of War, but Man of War has never had to chase a horse as good as Secretariat as we now reach the backstretch. It is Secretariat in front by 3 parts of a length as Man of War begins to move up and make up all the ground that Secretariat tried to gain. As we continue down this backstretch, Secretariat just in front. Man of War was briefly at his throat latch, but Secretariat reopens. He's in front by just over a length. Man of War staying in second. He is not in any rush. rush down this long stretch. Secretariat remains the leader. We round the turn. It is Ronnie, Turcotte, and Secretariat. They look behind to see Man of War has not given up just yet. Man of War swaps lanes, still eyeing Secretariat on the inside rail, but Secretariat continues to lead the way. Johnny Loftus says go on Man of War and goes to the lead. It is now Man of War in front by 3 parts of a length. Secretariat on the outside, Man of War to the inside. The two big red horses hit the top of the stretch. It's Man of War in front, but on the outside, Secretariat is getting asked, and here he goes! It's Secretariat! He blows Man of War out of the water! He's in front by 3 lengths, and quickly begins to extend it! It is Secretariat! In front! Man of War was second, then it was Sham in third, but it was all Secretariat today! Okay, it's not that cut and dry. It's not fair to compare horses from different time periods, as what was expected of them and considered normal contrasts harshly at certain points. Heck, Man of War never even saw a starting gate his whole career. All of his races were done from a standing start, so this simulated horse race already has problems. But let's say he became gate trained and was accustomed to the modern track surface standards and everything else. If we boil down what makes these two horses great, they really are polar opposites. It is a test of consistency and durability versus raw speed and power. Man of War is a way tougher and way more consistent horse than Secretariat, and easily would have trounced if Secretariat was even a little bit off, as shown with Prove Out and Onion both defeating him. Meanwhile, Man of War won the Potomac Handicap with 138 pounds impost and a swollen tendon in track record time. But by contrast, especially in his 3-year-old year, he scared off all the competition, so he frequently won against tiny fields with weak competition. For a few off days Secretariat did have, at his very best, he destroyed way better quality horses and larger fields. Consistency-wise, Man of War would always run a good race, but Secretariat was a bit more all or nothing. If the two were locked in a head-to-head duel, Man of War was going to prevail. If Secretariat won, it wasn't going to be by a little. And if we just focus on these horses on their best days, then Secretariat is without a doubt better, and a lot faster. Now you might bring up what I said earlier about Man of War's times being affected by different track conditions and heavier horseshoes, etc., to say that Secretariat is not definitely faster. And you'd be right to bring that up, so I got that accounted for. Man of War's records, with 2 major exceptions, all lasted less than 10 years. Horses of his era could reasonably equal his speed even back then. But did they do it with just as much ease as he did? The answer is also yes. Horses like Greylag and Snob II broke his Dwyer and Wither Stakes records respectively with just as much effort, or lack thereof. The Dwyer specifically being the one race Man of War ran all out, and the record he set was broken a year later. Meanwhile, Secretariat has records that have lasted 50 years, so it's safe to say Secretariat was objectively faster than Man of War, even when factoring Man of War's inhibitors. If you're curious for the 2 records of Man of Wars that lasted longer, they were a mile and 3/8 and a mile and 5/8, both distances infrequently ran on, especially by top horses. So who you choose for the win simply depends on whether you prefer raw power or reliability and grit. Man of War could have more things go wrong for him and still prevail, while Secretariat would most definitely need perfect training, conditioning, and a decently good trip in order to win. But if we get rid of the old phrase, it's horse racing, and just focus on these 2 horses on their best days, you'd be hard-pressed to find any horse that could defeat Secretariat, let alone Man of War. So with all those nuances discussed, I give Secretariat the edge 55% of the time, and Man of War 45%. Despite their similar nicknames, these two were certainly horses of a different color. And both of these champions should be remembered as ultimate heroes for horse racing that reinforce this great quote: "A racehorse is an animal that can take several thousand people for a ride at the same time." And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to take a little bit of a break from horse racing versus. Comment down what you think would be a great matchup for next episode, but for now, I'm going to focus on some other projects. See you guys next time.